This week on the DoD Contract Academy podcast, we're going to teach you the very first thing that you need to do in order to sell to the government, and that is register your business. My name is Ricky Howard. I'm the host of DoD Contract Academy podcast. I'm a former government procurement officer. I've managed over $82 billion in government contracts. And I've advised over 400 companies on selling to the U.S. government. Our clients are selling millions and millions of dollars of products, services, and technology to the federal government. And this podcast is here to help you start your business or expand on your business with the federal government. So let's get started. First things first, why do you want to sell to the government? If you don't know that, you probably need to listen to another episode, right? But the U.S. government's the single biggest purchaser of goods and services in the world. They buy everything you can think of. Usually it's billions of dollars of those things. Sometimes it's hundreds of millions of dollars. It just depends on what you're selling. Now, we've done other episodes about how you can go in and see exactly how much the government spends on your product, service, technology. But after you've determined that, and the government almost assuredly does buy what you're selling, then you actually have to register your business to sell to the government. And I recommend you do this whether you plan on being a prime or subcontractor. If you're priming, that means that you're the prime company on a contract with the federal government. Now, in order to be a prime, you have to register your business, okay? Now, to subcontract, you don't necessarily have to, but I think what you're gonna find is that there are going to be opportunities for you to prime contracts, even when you're subcontracting. And there's other great reasons for you to be registered in the federal system. So without further ado, let's get started. There are people out there that you could pay to register your business, and I don't recommend doing that. You can register your business yourself. There's a lot of reasons why you should do this yourself, but primarily because there's so many questions in here pertaining to your business that only you can answer them. Your tax ID numbers, specific questions that only you're going to be able to answer, that it really makes sense for you to do this yourself. Plus, government systems are tricky. This is run by GSA. It's not the best website out there. And I know I have clients that have had issues delegating authority to go in here. You don't want to give somebody like your email address and your credentials and going into SAM.gov. This is for your business. There's a button here that just says get started. So if you haven't been here before, this is what you're going to hit, get started. And then it takes you to a page, get started with registration and unique entity ID. If you don't know what any of that means, that's okay. Now, I want you to click on right here. It says entity registration checklist. Now, I've already downloaded this, so I have it up here, but that's something that you want to have, and you want to read through the entire thing because that's going to give you a preview of some of the information that you're going to be expected to input into the system. But before you can actually start inputting anything, you are going to have to create a SAM.gov account, which is here. This is step 2. I click on step 2, and it gives you the ability to sign in. Now, in order to sign in to SAM.gov, and I just wanted to show you this, you're going to have to start a login.gov account. Okay, you can create an account. This doesn't cost anything, but this is a security feature in SAM.gov. You're going to have to do it. Okay, so once you do that, now you're really going to be ready to prepare your data. And how are you going to prepare your data? You're going to go through that checklist that they downloaded. See, so they make it pretty simple. This actually is a good feature of the site. It gives you step-by-step what you need to do, okay? Now, taking a look at that checklist, which I downloaded, do not be intimidated by some of the information on here. Look, I've been in government contracting for 20 years, and some of these things I have to look up, okay? When you're going through here, remember, you're just registering your business. You're not committing to anything, okay? You want to make sure that you're honest on here. If you have any questions about anything, you can contact a lawyer if you have any legal questions, but you're not proposing to do something for the government here. In the first section, it talks about your unique entity ID. Now, if you've been in this before, if you're familiar with what FedBizOps was, that is the old SAM.gov. You used to have a DUNS number and a cage code. Now you're going to have a unique entity ID, and you'll get a cage code too. But it basically tells you that I think the main point of this is you have to have a legal business. So you have to have a registered business in order to register in here. So you need an LLC. I'm not going to walk through how to do that. You can go to LegalZoom or call a lawyer. But forming a small business legally in the U.S. is not hard. Okay, that's something you can do relatively quickly and inexpensively. So you want to make sure you have a business. And here are some of the questions that it's going to ask you, right? Later on, it's going to tell you you want your tax ID number. And simple things that for you, you're going to know off the top of your head. When did your organization start? What's the website? What's your taxpayer ID number, right? So you start seeing, this is why it goes through cage codes or N-cage codes. Now, if you don't know what a cage code is, there's a lot of acronyms that are going to be in here, but this is essentially an additional code you're going to need, and it's going to be assigned to you. So it says right here, if you don't have one, don't worry about it. Just click no when you apply, and it will be assigned to you. What'll happen after you submit your registration is you're going to get an email discussing hey, this is what your cage code is. You're going to get a confirmation that you've received that. Goes through ownership details, predecessor details. If you've actually, it says right here, successor to or predecessor entity that held a federal contract within the last 3 years. Be honest, just honest each of these. Answer each of these as honestly as you can. And if you're not sure, you can ask someone. It doesn't hurt to, you can call a lawyer. You can send us an email and I can probably answer some of these for you. You have some general information. A lot of these are pretty easy to answer. When it talks about disadvantaged business enterprise, I've done other podcasts on this. It's talking about like woman-owned small business, 8A. There's certain SDVOSB, which is service disabled veteran-owned business. It says must be certified by a federal agency. Okay, so this is a question I get a lot. If you're a woman and you own a business, that doesn't mean you have a woman-owned small business in the federal eyes. You actually have to go through the SBA and register your business. You need to get the WOSB registration because they want proof that you are a woman-owned small business. And that takes time. That is not overnight. This is relatively quick. I've seen you get once you hit send on the application, I have seen it come back in 7 days. I think it's probably best to assume it's going to take a month, but probably between a week and a month. So just so to set your expectations, this isn't something you're going to do and be registered the next day. Financial information, right? So it walks through some of the things according to your business. Do you accept credit cards? How do you accept payments? And if you've been in business, that if you don't, now you're going to have to figure out how your business is going to accept payments. It has some of these questions here that you're like, hey, what's your executive compensation questions? Look, answer them honestly. Preceding questions. Here, you can go through each of these. I'm not going to answer each of these questions for you. I'm just showing you the type of things that you're going to have to answer when you get to apply for this. So when you actually hit apply, it's going to be very similar to what you're looking at here. Now, when you start seeing these codes, this is what throws some people off. And I'll use this as an example. Is your organization responding to a federal procurement opportunity that contains the provision at FAR 52.209? You may not be responding to any federal procurement opportunity right now. So that will make it easy not to check that box. But I recommend clicking on each of these. What each of those links are going to take you to is the federal acquisitions regulations. Now, the federal acquisitions regulations are the bane of a lot of people's existence. This is not something you have to memorize. You need to know where it is. I would save, so right now we're on acquisition.gov. It's another government website. I would save this in your favorites because you're going to go back to this. You may be going after an opportunity that has what they would call an FAR or a FAR clause in it. And you can come here and just check that clause, see what it means. These are great things, especially when you're putting a proposal in to the government, when you're about to commit yourself to something, check each of these FAR clauses and understand what you're committing your company to, okay? Because a lot of times they'll put a clause in there, a number, and a company doesn't read through it, and then they're on contract, and now they're realizing, oh, I didn't plan on having to do all this extra work, and some of these are going to give you a lot of constraints and requirements. So here, you want to read through that, but I just wanted to click on the link to show you that you can go in there and see exactly what it's asking for. Once you make it through all of those, it'll start asking you about goods and services. This is another big question I get about selling to the government, especially when you first start to register. What are your NAICS codes? Okay. An NAICS code and your PSC codes, just think of it this way. You can see what it stands for here, but there are NAICS codes. There's a lot of different NAICS codes, and they are essentially just a number that represents different industries. So you might have when I say an industry, information technology, accounting, legal services. There'll be an NAICS code associated with each one. And you can check here to look up different NAICS codes, see which ones apply to you. Now, are you going to be held to these? No. Take your best guess at which ones you want to use. You may have to change these later on. And By the way, I've seen the exact same thing put on contract under multiple NAICS codes, okay? Because there is a lot of gray area here. Don't spend too much time on this. Product service codes are similar to NAICS codes, but they're more specific, okay? So they're codes representing industries, for instance, where there might be an NAICS code for accounting. There might be a product service code for tax preparation services. So that's something that's very specific to accounting. So you can see, just think broad, specific, okay? What are your size metrics? Here, it's talking about annual receipts. It's giving you another link here so you can check out the definitions here. If you ever want to figure out how big your company is, just know that it's usually determined by the NAICS code, okay? Because there's going to be a size standard associated with each one of those. And usually it's either going to be how many employees you have or how much revenue you're bringing in each year. Just depends. So you can look that up. Just going through the checklist here. Again, not going to go through each specific example, but here we can talk about who's responsible for determining prices. These are the type of things that you're going to be able to answer as the business owner. So pays to go through all of these. It talks about how your business is structured. Okay. Are you a disadvantaged business? So you can go through all of these. And the checklist makes it really easy to answer questions that you might not know just by reading this. Am I a disadvantaged business? Click on the fire clause. And also check out our podcast because we have different in YouTube because we have different episodes covering a lot of these topics like NAICS codes, for instance. Now, after you are done looking at this checklist and reviewing it, making sure you have the information that you need and you familiarize, you don't memorize the file links, but just have an idea of what's coming. Now what you can do is go to Get Started. All right, so this is step 4, Get Started. And when you click Get Started, you're going to choose Register Your Entity or get a unique ID. And it's going to tell you right here, if you're registering your entity, you'll still get your UEI number, okay? So don't be confused if you, like, hey, I need a UEI, but I also want to register my entity. You want to check Register Your Entity there. Now, so guys, from there, you are just registering your business, going into the application, go through everything. If you've gone through the checklist like we talked about, you should have most of that information and not have to wonder what your answers are going to be. Once you hit send, what can you expect? I would expect a confirmation. I would take a screenshot at least. Make sure you're receiving an email from SAM.gov, and it's going to take a little bit of time for that to get registered. But if you don't see anything after a couple of weeks, I would start going back and make sure you keep checking to see what the status is. So you can log into SAM.gov if you've registered and start seeing where you are in the entity process. If you're having any troubles with that, you can reach out to us. And hey, you can go to dodcontract.com anytime you want and get our training, our step-by-step training on selling to the government. Because look, registering your business is the first step. The next step is you want to build a sales engine for selling to the government. And selling to the government is not like selling B2B or B2C. It's very specific. So we have very specific steps that we walk our students through in selling. We also provide them with our pipelining tool, which can help them bring their opportunities into a system where they can track them, track their conversion rate, track their quota and how they're meeting at revenue targets. There's a lot that goes into that, but getting there and having somebody to help you and advise you along the way is really important. If you're interested in that, we can help at dodcontract.com. And for those of you that are already selling to the government, we do have higher end consulting services where we work one-on-one with companies. That's something you can reach out, schedule a consultation. We can talk about what that looks like. If you're just getting started, I think this is a good place to start. Registering your business, doing some of the research on your own, and then you might want to check out dodcontract.com for some additional help. But guys, as usual, thanks for listening this week. If you have any comments or would like to see us go through any more how-to, then just put a request in the comments. That's how we use that. So if you're on iTunes or Spotify, leave us a review. In the review, you can say, hey, this is great, but I want to see this. Or, hey, Rick, you suck because you're not covering this. Try to be at least constructive. Give me something that I can use as far as the team and I putting something together that can help you. And that's what we're really looking for. All right, guys, we'll see you next time.